Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and today we are joined by Curtis. Curtis is here to talk to us about a number of topics. So we're going to talk about balanced dog training, mental and physical fulfillment for dogs, shelter advocacy, and so much more. So we've got a lot to get into. Curtis, thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. So, like Brittany said, my name's Curtis Johnson. I am a training and behavioral director at a nonprofit animal shelter where, we work with local dogs, behavioral cases. We help municipal shelters in the area. And essentially, I took this job to help educate the public, help educate staff, volunteers, whoever it is, train as best as I possibly can to help teach people the importance of mental and physical fulfillment for dogs and how it impacts behavior, how it can ideally keep dogs home, because shelters are overrun right now. Everyone needs help. We need not just more space, but we need educated dog owners, right? And it's super, super important that people understand. And a big part for me, what I've been preaching for the last decade while doing this, is how can I help people understand the world from a dog's perspective? Because I think we spend a lot of time, uh, we understand dogs in our own world from the human perspective. We think we know what they want, but I think a big part of what would help dogs stay home is, can we see the world the way they see it, right? What do they want? What do they need? Not what do we think they want? So that's why I took this job.
Yeah, you and I share a very similar mission of just trying to educate the public because, like you said, we are just not educated as a population on dogs, like what dogs need, how dogs learn. I mean, A to Z. And so I think that's really important as far as a mission, because I do think a lot of the shelter issues that we're having with the shelters being overrun and dogs being dumped and dogs being abandoned is lack of education. So I love that we share that. And I think that, today's going to be helpful for achieving that mission. So
Absolutely.
let's kind of talk about what got you into shelter work. Like, was there a pivotal moment or something that happened in life where you were like, I need to go into shelter work? This is kind of like my calling.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, it all started, a long time ago. I started working with dogs at a pretty young age, and I started volunteering at my local shelter in Rhode Island. I'm just like any other person with a passion for dogs, and I'm volunteering. And, the first question I ask, the same way I get every single day, is, oh, can I work with the difficult dogs?
Yeah.
And me being naive, I'm like, oh, I'm strong enough. I can deal with it, right? I'm
Right.
confident enough. And 10 years later, I'm like, that is the last question I ever want to hear anybody say, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't know enough, right? The average person does not know what this dog needs. And so I got into sheltering after, like I said, almost a decade now. It's been since I've worked in a shelter and volunteered in a shelter. I went to a dog training school in North Carolina where I worked with working dogs, police dogs, military, service dogs, things like that. And I developed a passion for teaching and training because I had an incredible mentor that poured his life into teaching us and, showing us the importance of educating people on
Hmm.
what dogs really want. And so I've gone from working dogs to sport dogs to pet dogs. And all along the line, my passion is teaching, right? I love to help clients and their family and their dogs to create a better relationship and to help them get whatever they need in life with their dog, finding a happy balance.
Hmm.
And I think, now I'm trying to carve out a new path. Something that's new for me is taking on this role as a behavioral director and trying to not just help these dogs in the shelter and give them a better life because they're in their kennels all day. They don't get to live the normal life of a pet where they're out going for walks every night and they're sniffing and doing all that. What can I do to help these dogs?
Hmm.
More importantly, what can I do to help educate the staff, the volunteers, the public, and just change the way we think about dogs as a whole? I know it's a big thing to bite off. It's not going to be easy, but it's it's something that needs to be done.
Hmm. So you and I connected through a trainer that I use here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I told her, I want to start shadowing you and have you as a mentor, and I want to do the behavioral dogs. And she was like, slow down. Slow down, cool your jets, dude. You're not going to be ready for that. And so it's kind of funny. You said the same thing. You're like, give me those challenging dogs. And I don't think a lot of us know what we're getting into. We're like, oh, I'm strong. I've been around dogs. I love dogs. And then you start to actually get around some behavioral cases. You're like, oh, that's different. That's
Yeah.
not what I thought.
Yeah.
So when you took this director role, was there like an idealistic vision you had for it? And was it different than you expected?
I would say the idealistic vision I had was essentially, like I was saying, educate staff, educate the local community. And I'm like, it's going to be rainbows and butterflies, or people are going to be like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Like
Right.
he's teaching us everything that we ever wanted to know. It's not that easy, and everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a
Yeah.
dog, and there's no limit to or regulations to having those opinions. You can just say whatever.
Yeah.
And so ideally, I was like, oh, people will buy in. I'll show them everything that I want them to see, everything that I've experienced. I want to challenge people. I want people to challenge me. I want to soak up everything I can. And so I just thought, it was going to be a fun way to help teach people. And now our staff, our volunteers, the people that come in, they love it, right? They've completely bought into the program. It's relatively new to them. I'm teaching them all about how dogs learn and why they do what they do.
Hmm.
But I do think it's a lot more of an uphill battle than I thought. And I don't know why I thought that. I've been working with dogs for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was an idealistic version of this. And then there's real life of, okay, we got to dig our heels in. We got a lot of work to do.
Right. What's been the most surprising thing since you got involved at the shelter?
There's so many different things. It's really some of it is really jarring. One of the most surprising things coming from working with working dogs were people and sport dogs. And I was teaching police and military teams kind of how to work with their dog, deploy their dog, doing handlers courses. These people pour their blood, sweat, and tears into these animals. They are their family. They're their best friend. They are everything to them. They learn everything from behavioral to animal husbandry, like wellness, first aid, everything, right?
Hmm.
People are fully invested. And that's what I sponged up. That was my first experience. And I thought, this is what everybody does with their dogs, because this is what I do with my dog. This is what they do. Sure, everyone does that. Going from this or that to private training,
Yeah.
people just started throwing money at me and said, fix my dog. All right.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. This is what you're going to need to do. This is what your dog is displaying. And this is how we kind of work through it. It's a long, drawn out process. There's no instant fix. I'm not a computer technician and we're dealing with like hardware here. You're dealing with a living, breathing animal that can make decisions for itself, that has thousands of years of genetic programming in it and that you have to learn to understand. And they're like, no, I don't really want to. I just want you to fix it. I'm like,
Hmm.
it's not really my style. That's not really what we're here to do. And then now I'm on the complete opposite end where I don't get to be that intermediate where I can help people and prevent surrenders by training their dog. It's very jarring seeing people say they'll just show up and be like, I don't want my dog anymore. You
Mm.
know, I don't want it. And I'll be like, okay, what's going on? I can give you free training, free help, whatever you need to help prevent this dog from being put in the shelter. This isn't going to necessarily be a fun experience for your dog, right?
Right.
This is not
Right.
going to be a good life. And they're like, nope, I don't want any help. I just don't want this dog anymore. It's like, I had this dog for 5 years and all of a sudden you can just give up on it. I'm like, that for me is the most surprising thing because
Yeah.
coming from a world of people putting their blood, sweat, and tears into their dog, doing anything they possibly can to seeing the polar opposite of, I just don't want this dog. It's shell shocking to say the least.
Yeah. I cannot wrap my head around people who, I've had the dog 5 years, 6 years, however many, and they're like, I just don't want it anymore. And it's like, what? And a part of me wonders if it's like part of how we are moving as a society. We're very materialistic. We want the next, bag, the next sunglasses, the next shoes, and we're so quick to be disposing of other items that feels like it's bled into pets. And that's such an odd thing to think about, that pets are just like this like commodity where you're like, okay, well, I had the next cutest dog and I'm kind of done with it, so I just don't want it. Like it's an odd thing to think about, but you're seeing it right now. I feel like a lot with doodles. You're seeing it with Frenchies. People saw it was a cute dog. It was really popular. It was trendy. People got it. And then they're like, never mind. I'm all
Yes.
set. I had it for a little bit. I got a few photos. Like, it's such an odd concept to me that I don't think I'll ever comprehend, you know?
It's a lot of it, I think, is just the instant gratification kind of world that we live in now is,
True.
I love this. This dog is beautiful. It's pretty. I don't want to know anything about it, but I
Yep.
like it, right? I want to post it on social media. Or people show up for training and they're like, I want this fixed now.
Right.
Like, we're talking about spending the next 10 years of your life with your dog. Like, this is an ongoing every single day kind of deal. And I've been working with dogs for a decade. I have 3 dogs. And if you think I don't wake up some days and I'm like, wow, like I just
Yeah.
don't have it in me today. And my dog's like, guess what, buddy? You're doing it. Sometimes I don't have the energy, but there is no, I mean, of course, there's days off from training. Of course, there's days off from, intense exercise, things like that. But this is a lifelong commitment to not let your dog deteriorate mentally, physically, behaviorally. Like there is no instant gratification. And I think it helps keep me grounded. And I love people who get invested in working with dogs because I do think it's something that keeps everybody grounded to work with something so full of life and so natural and to understand it. I
Hmm.
think it's beautiful.
Hmm. And I know your focus is on seeing the world from a dog's perspective. So, what does that mean to you, seeing the world through like a dog's eyes? Like, how would you explain that?
Sure. So I think a big part of it, and a lot of what I talk about is it goes back to the very beginning for me. It's like understanding the domestication of dogs, right? Understanding how dogs developed behavioral patterns, why they do what they do, and how dogs lived for tens of thousands of, I mean, probably a lot more than that, like forever, right? And then over the last 100 years or so, we have completely changed the social norms of like what a dog should be doing and how they live with us. And I think it's super important to find a happy medium between human social norms and what a dog genuinely wants and what a dog does in its day to day life. Dogs want to forage, they want to hunt for their food, they want to work, they want to sniff, they need exercise, like they need that mind body connection and that positive feedback loop every single day. And a lot of times we don't give our dogs any of that. A lot of times, and I've dealt with this a lot in rescue work over the last 10 years too. It's like, I want to rescue this dog. I want to save this dog. And they pull it out of the shelter and the dog just like sits on the couch and doesn't do anything, doesn't go anywhere, has never been to a park or a restaurant. And it's like, well, I just want to give my dog the comfiest life possible. It's like, well, I'm here to tell you that I just don't think your dog wants that. Like, I think your dog wants to go outside. It wants to run. It wants to snip. It wants to forage. It wants to be reinforced by the world. It needs to get punishment from the world. Like, it needs to learn and adapt and learn to be resilient to stress and
Hmm.
not exposing a dog to stress because you don't want it to have a bad incident or something is not doing anybody any favors. I'm not a parent. I don't know anything about kids, but I'd like to imagine if I was a parent, I would do the same thing and say, let's expose our kids to stress. Let's show them what it's like to live and learn and fail, and to be corrected for your mistakes. So I do think understanding the world from a dog's perspective is super important to creating the strongest possible relationship and help prevent dogs from being surrendered. We have so
Yeah.
many dogs that come in because, they're barking at home or they're being destructive or they poop inside. And it's like, the dog doesn't necessarily know any better. It's stuck in this living room with no outlet. You know, I think if people did some more research on the dogs that they want and why they wanted them, we'd see a lot less owner surrenders. And I do think it's just an uphill battle of educating the public of how to see the world like that.
Hmm. The point you made about dogs not experiencing stress, man, I hear that all the time. Like, and in so many different capacities. Like, oh, I don't want to take my dog on a walk they might see another dog and get
And
stressed
then you
out.
turn to 180 degrees. Let's just turn around, right?
Yeah. And then, like, people, and we'll get into this because we're going to talk a little bit about balanced dog training, but people not wanting to use certain tools because they don't want their dog to be stressed. But much to the analogy of children, you wouldn't, well, some people would, but you wouldn't parent your child like that. You wouldn't protect them from everything and make sure they experience nothing bad or stressful. And the people that do, there's certainly repercussions for how they raise those kids, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
way.
we won't talk
No
about
way.
that. All parents, you guys are doing great. That's what we just said. So, what are some of the most common ways that you think humans misunderstand dogs?
I think, I mean, a big part of what we would call like a behavioral problem in a dog is just like a conflict between natural canine behavior and what our expectations on, are. They're super adaptable, they're very versatile. Um, but a lot of times, behaviors that appear in dogs are just supernatural things that maybe accidentally get reinforced,
Yeah,
or they go on for too long. They've never experienced any type of negative association with them. And so you have dogs that bark or chew or dig, or they pull on a leash, they jump up on people, they'll chase a squirrel. They'll guard their food. This is a really, really common one. It's like, my
yeah,
dog has issues, it's resource guarding. I'm like, well, resource guarding is just a natural survival behavior, and survival is incredibly important, right? Is it
right.
not? And fear is incredibly important in a dog because it's what keeps dogs alive, right? And so when we see dogs that are scared of something, it's not like a defect, it's like a survival instinct.
Yeah.
Or being, having some separation anxiety or something. It's like the end of the world for people. It's like dogs are some of the most social animals on the planet, and social isolation is a pretty strong punishment for them. And
Hmm.
they don't necessarily know how to deal with it. Chewing and digging and being destructive. Dogs that are understimulated, you know, typically in a world where dogs maybe 1,000 years ago are foraging for their own food for 12 to 16 hours a day, like that genetic disposition to do that doesn't just disappear because you gave a dog a home and put it in a living room. Like the dog still needs to do those things, right?
Hmm.
It wants to dig, it wants to go hunt, it wants to find its food, um, to reward itself. Like it's
Hmm.
genetically ingrained into these dogs to work and to have a job and to find fulfillment that way. So I think a lot of people, we ask that, you know, it remains or calm 8 to 10 hours a day. But when we want it to work, it should work. And when we want it to do something, it has to do it. But when I'm busy and I don't want it to do it, it can't do it. It can't react to people the wrong way. I don't know. It's just tough to say because we have these expectations for our dog. Like, I want you to be this calm, stuffed animal,
Yeah.
and I want you to be so well behaved, but I refuse to learn what it's like to be a dog and see the world from your perspective.
Hmm.
I just think it takes time. It takes time to understand why dogs do what they do and how can we fix it. There is no instant fix, instant gratification. Like, you're not changing evolution in 100
Right.
years.
Right.
If this is life with a dog, and if you're not ready for it, like I think it's important to do research and understand whether this is something you want or not.
Hmm. Yeah. Heavy on the expectations because so much of why people are mad at their dog or disappointed at their dog is just sheerly from an expectation that they had for that dog. Like I've worked in a shelter for a while and a dog will go out, it'll come back 1 or 2 days later. And I'm like, already? And they're like, yeah, it wasn't potty trained. And it's like, you had that expectation that it would be potty trained. Like we told you that dog was not potty trained.
Yeah,
Or well, they barked. And it's like,
yeah.
okay, so
It's
your
dogs.
expectation was that they wouldn't bark at all? Like it's a dog. I think you are maybe looking for a stuffed animal because it's going to bark. So yeah, the expectations are setting dogs up for failure. And I hate to say it, I think social media might be playing into that a little bit too, because you do see certain dogs online acting a certain way, doing
Yes.
tricks, getting
Yes.
dressed up, and people are like, ooh, I can do that. And so they
Yeah.
have that expectation their dog can meet that, and they just can't. They can't live up to that expectation. So I do think a lot of human expectations are what set dogs up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
let's pivot into physical and mental exercise because you even said earlier how important this is. So let's start kind of with like physical. So, exercise, I think a lot of people are like, I'm going to just walk my dog and they'll be tired. I'll tire them out. I'll let them out. They'll run. They'll be tired. Let's talk about how exercise is more than just tiring the dog out. Like, talk to us about physical exercise.
Sure. So I think, there's a massive difference between like fatigue and exhaustion and genuine fulfillment, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of to your point, like, oh, I just take my dog for a couple of walks a day. And it's like, oh, what kind of dog you have? It's like, Australian Shepherd. I'm like, okay, we got a lot of work to do here because that dog just wants to run. It wants to herd. It wants to use its teeth, right? It wants to do everything that it's been genetically programmed to do forever.
Yeah.
So, dogs can run for miles and miles and miles and they can be exhausted, but we're not tapping into unmet behavioral or cognitive or social needs that these dogs have, right? The problem solving stuff. But physical exercise, like if we don't let our dogs run and be outside and explore the world, I do think you're just going to see a deterioration in behavior, right?
Hmm.
So I do think, like you said, going for a couple of walks a day, I think it's a start. But the more walks you go on, the more conditioned your dog becomes to doing that physical exercise, and the more
Yeah.
physical exercise it's going to need. And it becomes this constant treadmill. So I think there's a healthy balance between giving your dog the physical exercise it needs, but also giving it the physical fulfillment it needs.
Hmm.
So, going for a couple of walks a day, it's a good start. But I think, if you think of dogs as an animal for thousands and thousands of years, what they've been doing forever, I think we're not even close to meeting. And I'm not going to sit here and, preach to anybody because there's days where my dogs do not get enough exercise. And I'm well aware of that. And, sometimes I just have to wake up and I'm tired and I just have to stop being a baby and just, do what's best for my dog.
Yeah. I feel that right now. I have my first working dog ever.
Yeah, fun.
Very different from having Pomeranians. And so there are days where I'm like, I just don't feel like running through any drills or doing anything. But it's like, I committed to this dog. I have to. Like, it's a discipline. I'm a disciplined athlete. So I'm like, all right, if I can run marathons, do triathlons, I can force myself to go work with this dog. It doesn't matter how tired I am. I got to do it. And sure, there's plenty of days where I fall short. There's a lot of days. I'll text
A
my
lot
trainer
of
and I'm like, hey, I wasn't great today. She's like, cool, we'll pick it up tomorrow. We'll figure it out. We'll pivot. And, that's kind of part of it too, right? It's like, I think sometimes it's like we try to be 100% where it's like, hey, maybe today 50% is good. Like doing something is good. And recognizing no one is a perfect dog owner. Like no one's perfect every single day. And so, that's the physical component, which weighs into the mental component. So for you, what does proper mental stimulation look like for a dog?
Sure. I think a big part of this question is it really depends on your dog, right? It
Yeah.
depends on your dog, your breed, the temperament. What does your specific dog want? If you have a Labrador Retriever, and it wants to go out and swim, or it wants to, learn how to do blind retrieves or marked retrieves or find bumpers and learn directional cues, right? You're adding in mental exercise with that physical exercise, right? You're
Hmm.
tapping to that cognitive need to problem solve and give them fulfillment. If you have a herding dog, right, and you don't give it the outlet to go outside and chase and use its teeth or figure out how to maneuver through obstacles, right? Um, it's going to have a lot of unmet mental needs that are going to come out somewhere, right? I think a big part of me understanding this is for the last 10 years, I've had the opportunity to bring all of my dogs to work, right? So I have three dogs, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. The youngest is a Malinois, and the middle one's a Malinois. And I've always had the opportunity to bring them to work and train with them in my free time. Now I'm working 8 to 5, and I'm super busy. I don't have the time to bring my dog to work and train him in my downtime. All of a sudden, I've had the most confident, stable dog for the last 4 years. All of a sudden, I'm watching my dog become reactive,
Mm.
right, towards other dogs or towards other people.
Hmm.
It only happened once or twice, and I didn't get upset with my dog. I didn't get mad at my dog. It was like, oh, this isn't. My dog's telling me that like I'm not meeting some type of need for him.
Right.
Right? He's understimulated mentally, and I know it's not physical because I run this dog all the time. We play fetch, we play games, right? He's running, like
Hmm.
he's missing something.
Hmm.
I think it really just depends on the dog that you have, the temperament of the dog. Like, do you give it the outlet to solve problems or to socialize properly? If this dog had a job 100 years ago, what would this dog be doing, and how can you help meet those expectations? And like I said earlier, it's about kind of meeting in the middle, meet
Yeah.
halfway. Understand, as the average dog owner, you don't have access to farms and cattle and livestock for your guardian breed to kind of feel fulfilled.
Hmm.
Um, but there's things that you can do. There's scent work classes being offered by trainers all over the country.
Yeah.
There's agility classes being offered everywhere. Um, the outlets are there. It's just a matter of, like we said, sometimes you just got to wake up and do what's best for the dog every single day.
Yeah. And you touched on this. I mean, an understimulated dog, they might become destructive. They might become aggressive. I mean, there's certainly repercussions, and you see it all the time on Facebook. Had this dog for 6 years, and all of the sudden they're doing A, B, C, D. And and I see people in the comments almost getting to it because they're like, "Well, what changed? What happened?" They're like, "Oh, I got a new job. I'm homeless." And it's like, "Okay, well, you kind of just answered your own question there. The dog is missing something, and that's why you're seeing those behaviors." And I don't think a lot of people are putting that together right now. What are some things you can think of, a few even small things that dog owners could do to improve their dog's quality of life?
I mean, whenever somebody comes in and has questions, concerns, or my dog is starting to behave like this after 7 years, I've never seen this before. The first question I ask is your dog getting enough physical and mental exercise? Because if we haven't answered 1A and 1B with, like, yes, I know for sure that they are, that's what we need to do,
Mhm.
right? So I think a lot of times what people are missing with their dog is an appropriate level of, like, relationship building and socializing and playing, engagement based training. I see so often people go to the pet store and they buy all of these fluffy toys, and they're like, oh, my dog just wants to chew on this stuffed animal. And it's funny because I've traveled a lot, and if you go to, like, pet stores in different parts of the world, a lot of countries only sell toys that are, like, engagement based, right?
Mhm.
Here's this tug toy, here's this
Yeah.
rope, here's this ball on a string. It's like dogs are not necessarily self entertaining animals when it comes to being social animals. They want to engage and they want to play. And everyone's like, "Oh, my dog loves this stuffed animal with the squeaker." It's like, well, I think your dog just wants to murder that thing that sounds kind of squeaky. Like, your dog's missing something, right? It wants to tap into its genetic potential. So I think my biggest thing is, like, engagement based play, right?
Yeah.
Training, obedience training is great. Getting your dog to understand training systems and communication is incredibly important. But if you can't get your dog to engage with you and value you and play with you, you're missing, like, the fundamental building block of everything that your dog needs. If your
Hmm.
dog does not look at you like the greatest thing on the planet every single day and understand how to play and engage, um, I think you're missing, like I said, the fundamental building block for success with
I
your
think
dog.
I think you're lecturing me. Did you talk to my trainer before this?
Ah,
This is the same lecture I just got maybe like 2 months ago. And I've had dogs my entire life. I obviously love dogs. Had this dog podcast for a couple of years. And it dawned on me, or it was brought to me by a trainer, and she was like, "Well, what kind of engagement are you getting? Like engaging play?" I'm
yeah.
like, "Ah, they have little stuffies, they run around, blah blah blah." And she's like, "No, like, are you engaging with them?" Like, and I just sat there and I was like, "Have I been missing this my entire life?" And the answer was yes. I mean, I literally got my first like actual tug toy for the puppy, and and I started to get a little frustrated, right? Because it was new for me, trying to engage with her to not only work on like drills and training, but this kind of like engaging play.
Yes.
And my trainer's like, you should really be spending at least like 15 minutes a day with each of your dogs individually. You have 4 dogs. Like, you really should be giving them time to engage with you and bond with you. And that was news to me. And I would like to think I was pretty educated. And I think I'm constantly being brought down a rung. It's like, you know nothing. And so it's great to hear you say that. It's definitely reinforcing for me. And I think for so many people, and we could probably talk an hour about that alone. We won't harp on it anymore, but it's a lecture for me. It's a lecture for the listeners. Let's pivot into training. And don't, no one turn this off. Everyone, please listen. Let's talk about balanced dog training. People have
Sure.
heard me talk about it before. What does balanced training mean to you?
Sure. This is, I hope we don't get too polarizing here, but I mean, balanced dog training for me, I don't think it's anything complicated. I don't think it's anything, it shouldn't be incredibly polarizing, but
Right.
I think understanding the world from a dog's perspective is a huge part of it, right? It's a dynamic world, it's a versatile world. It can be incredibly rewarding for them and it can be incredibly punishing, right? Dogs can make mistakes in the real world that are incredibly punishing for them. I remember working with a client for a really long time that was trying to get their very prey driven herding dog to stop chasing their chickens. I was like, okay, like, I just want to be transparent with you. Like, this is pretty much programmed into your dog. And what you're talking about is a complete rehardwiring,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Most likely not going to be successful. You're going to have to manage this forever. Um, she's going through so much training, blah, blah, blah. And I know, and she's a little bit older and she's really struggling with the amount of physical effort needed to kind of work through this. Turns out one of the chickens just like took its claw and slashed the dog across the chest. And it was like, it learned pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um, the world is not just sunshine and rainbows for dogs, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the most rewarding thing in the world, and sometimes the world punishes them. And I think understanding learning theory and operant conditioning and classical conditioning for dogs. And I think taking away any part of that recipe is hindering your dog, right? You have
Hmm.
to use all four quadrants of that operant conditioning in order for your dog to genuinely learn everything that you want it to learn. I think tinkering with reinforcement schedules is incredibly important. Creating a dog that's resilient to stress by, teaching it a training system and a communication system and almost doing like a progressive overload of stress where slowly as your dog starts to understand things you slowly start to change different variables. You introduce little stimuli here and there, little novelties, and teach your dog how to become resilient to it. Like I said, understanding the world from a dog's perspective. When people look at prong collars or e-collars and things like that, I understand why they get a bad reputation, why they get a bad stigma, and I don't disagree with it. There are some people who just slap a tool on a dog and punish the dog to make it stop doing something without doing any teaching. All
Right.
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 But if you look at a prong collar and, if you look at how dogs communicate with each other and how they play, like they bite each other
Hmm.
relentlessly. They bite each other hard over the neck, right? They bite each other hard on the jowls. Like that's just what dogs do. And then we see something like a prong collar, we're like, nope, that thing looks medieval. And like
Hmm.
that's seeing the world from a human perspective and not the dog's perspective, right? How
Yeah.
do we teach? And it's important understanding how we use these tools and how we teach with these tools. Um, but like anybody else, I love positive reinforcement more than anybody, right? I will do everything that I possibly can to positively reinforce everything before I ever introduce any type of correction, right? I want my dog to genuinely love doing what it does. And there's a reason why I love teaching tracking so much is because it's pretty much all positive reinforcement for the dog. Like
Hmm.
it's just addicting for them to learn how to use their nose and get rewarded for it. But I do think balance training is understanding how versatile a dog's world is, how dynamic it is. It's rewarding, it's punishing. Dogs learn through all four quadrants of that operant conditioning theory. Like it's just part of life.
Hmm.
Yeah. Don't correct your dog for something you haven't taught it,
Right.
right? Don't overly correct your dog. I'm a big, big advocate for teach, 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 right? It's very easy to force a dog to do something,
Hmm.
but what really matters is can you motivate a dog to want to do something and to learn and to problem solve?
Right. So, and you and I even hesitated when we first got into this topic, but there's so many misconceptions right now about balance trainers. And why do you think that is? And what are some of the big ones that you hear as far as
Uh,
misconceptions?
I think a big part of it is everyone thinks that balanced dog training is just straight up aversion training,
Mm,
just punishing, punishing, punishing.
right.
Um,
Which is
and I
not
do,
true at
no,
all.
no, no. And I think all of the balance, and I can't speak for everybody. I've worked with positive reinforcement trainers, balance trainers, everything. you can always add something to your tool belt, something that's going to help you learn. You should forever be a student. But it's so polarizing, I think, because there's no regulations on who can or can't become a dog trainer.
Right.
It's the Wild West out there. Someone can just start, they'll open an LLC. They've worked with dogs a couple of times in their life, and all of a sudden, they watched a couple of YouTube videos and they can start training people's dogs. All
Mm-hmm.
right. And there's no formal regulations on who can or can't touch your dogs. And I think a big part of it is, a lack of understanding or a lack of research and not knowing what's best for your specific dog. And some people will just speak things as if they're truth,
Yeah.
and the average person doesn't know any better and they're setting them up for failure. Um, I don't necessarily disagree with some of the stigmas. I've seen some balanced dog trainers completely use prong collars and e-collars terribly, right?
Sure.
Use them
Sure.
absolutely wrong. Um, and it's like, yeah, any tool, right? A harness, a gentle leader, a martingale, a slip lead, they're all in the wrong hands, incredibly aversive and dangerous, right? If you don't know how to use them. I just think it's so polarizing because everybody has a dog, everybody has an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
everybody has anecdotal stories of, my dog did this, so this is true for all dogs. Well, we don't even really understand why the dog's doing what it's doing. But I always tell people, if I was a plumber and I was sitting at the bar and I told somebody like, "Oh, I'm a plumber," they'd be like, "Cool, that's great."
Yeah.
And I tell people I work with dogs, and all of a sudden, like the floodgates get opened up, and there's so many opinions and stories and this and that, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I should have just told him I was a plumber at this point.
No, I get that. I say I have a dog podcast, and then people immediately jump in with something, and I'm like, I never said I was an expert. I'm just giving people information. So, yeah, I hear you on that. And let's talk about shelters a little bit. And I like to drive this home, especially right now. I think right now is so important. What are you seeing at shelters with respect to, you've been in the industry for a while. Are you seeing more dogs coming into the shelter? Are you seeing certain behaviors coming in more often, certain breeds? Like, what are
Yeah.
you seeing right now?
So I think it's all kind of depending on where you live, like it's regional. I think different dog breeds are popular in different places.
Yeah.
I think more so behaviorally, the most common thing that we're dealing with. I mean, behavior is getting worse and worse and worse, especially since this is just speculation for me. This is
Hmm.
not fact. I am not preaching this as fact. Um, so with social media blowing up and after COVID, a lot of dogs and people with their, maybe loving instant gratification and wanting that, we're seeing a lot of dogs that are incredibly under socialized. They're very fearful. They haven't been exposed to the world properly. A lot of people think socialization is just like, let my dog interact with everything that it possibly can,
Hmm.
no matter what happens.
Right.
That will help socialize. It's like, nope, we can't do that, right? You've got to do it properly. So our most common behavioral problem nowadays is 100% like fear-based anxiety, under socialization, things like that. We typically most dogs that come in, they might resource guard, they might
Hmm.
be reactive, right? When I see resource guarding, I'm like, okay, like that's normal. Like it is what it is. But when I see just like complete lack of socialization, lack of exposure, lack of confidence, um, those are the dogs that need the most help, that need the most work. We have some of these dogs are 6 or 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
They've lived their whole life like this. It's like we have a lot of work to do to help get this dog feeling comfortable and confident in its own skin.
Hmm.
um, but I think shelters are doing the right thing with public education, trying to, it's what we harp on all the time, is trying to help people. And I think even in this industry, like I said, it can be draining. It can be toxic. It can be polarizing.
Yeah.
But I've been seeing shelters, at least around me, kind of putting aside their differences and banding together and understanding we're all in this for the same reason. It's about animal welfare. It's about public education. It's about giving dogs the best chances of living a good life, however that may be. So I think shelters are doing a pretty good job nowadays of at least trying that. Resources are so limited. There's so many dogs. There's so
Yeah.
many shelters are overrun. People are just dumping their dogs, dropping them off. They're breeding dogs all over the place. Um, so I think everyone's really doing the best they can with what they have.
Hmm. I agree with that. I think, especially like, and I don't even want to call them this anymore, but I'm going to, for lack of a better term, kill shelters get such a bad reputation. But quite frankly, that's how they're set up, and they're forced to make those decisions. They don't want to
Nobody wants to make that decision.
ever. And at the end of the day, I mean, they have to. And it's also like, what livelihood or benefit is it for that dog to sit in that shelter for 3, 6, 9, 12 months and continue to just deteriorate and become unadoptable? Meanwhile, if they're taking up a spot, another dog can't come in there. And so it's just unfortunate the way the public has, looked down on kill shelters and just hasn't understood. And I almost wish we could just call it a different name. And I know that's a whole other thing, but I've talked to quite a few people who are like, oh, I don't donate to that shelter. I don't volunteer there because they're a kill shelter. And I'm like, well, you're actually doing them a massive disservice and you're contributing to the problem more than anything. So yeah, I think shelters are up against a huge hurdle right now. And one thing people need to understand is shelters don't have to take your dog. They're not there to clean up your mess. At the end of the day, I mean, you're fortunate that some of those are in place to provide these services. But if we keep tapping the services this hard, I don't know where that's going to take us. So,
I think it's kind of like what you said. It's, we have to save as many lives as we possibly can. There's no space in shelters. There's nothing anyone can do. People don't want to make these decisions,
yeah,
but it really is about we have to save the most lives possible.
yeah,
And whatever, like you said, there's a huge stigma behind it, but it is a massive uphill battle.
yeah. So, Curtis, what is one final piece of advice for the listeners? And it could be advice about anything. It could be if they want to build a better relationship with their dog, if you want to leave something about shelters, what's like one thing you would leave everyone with?
I think there's a couple big things, right? If you want to get a dog, do your research, find out what's best for you, your lifestyle, your energy, right?
Yeah,
Are you planning on having kids? Like, do you want a dog that can be around kids? Do you move around a lot? Like, think of this as a 10-year commitment, right? Don't get a dog and then after 5 years, you're like, I don't really want to do this anymore.
right.
Shelters are full. We cannot take any more of your dogs just because you don't want it. Like, please, please, please do your research and
Hmm.
find out what's best for you. And I think a big conversation that I've had in the past and recently is, do you love and want dogs simply because of the way they make you feel, right? Do they make you feel good? Or do you want and love a dog because you understand them, you know what they need, you know what they are, you know what they're capable of, and you're ready to give them the life that they need,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So do your research, right? You'll have the best companion, the best friend, the best family member you could ever dream of, but you have to put the work in. It's not easy and it shouldn't be easy. Um, so spend time understanding what your dog wants, what your dog needs, if it's right for you. Because if you decide in the future it's not, our shelters are overrun. We need help. We don't have the most resources. And we're dealing with an incredible amount of owner surrenders, the most I've ever seen. People just giving up on their dogs. So please just do your research.
Curtis, thank you for coming on today. I think this was super helpful for listeners and appreciate the work that you're doing in shelters.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.